I got to mention before I jump in this morning how much I appreciate everyone who helped serve at the Oakdale Family Feast this past week. We have the privilege of serving, I think 1,500 meals, something like that, this past Friday afternoon. And it takes lots and lots of people, and it takes lots of people with a great attitude and who are ready to sacrifice and serve. And I just could not be more proud of those who were there and did such a great job. I also appreciate our senior adult pastor, Chris Moore, who was totally in charge and had everything under control, even though I wasn't able to be there because I've been sick this past week, as Chris mentioned. But thank you to everybody. How about we say thank you to those who served and took care of everything on Friday. And I want to tell you this morning, especially if you're new to OBC, today is going to be a little bit different. I have sort of some good news and some bad news, and it's one of those situations where the same thing is both the good news and the bad news. Okay, the good news is I'm not preaching this morning. I should have started with the bad news. The bad news is I'm not preaching this morning. Here's the deal. Last week I shared with you the exciting news that the Personnel Committee would be bringing a recommendation to the church on December the 3rd, that's in 2 Sundays, that we create a new position of missions pastor and that we hire a young man named Micah Compton for that position. Now, again, we talked about that last week, and I have to tell you that I am so excited about this. I've already mentioned this once to somebody this morning. You're probably going to hear me say this in the months to come. But we are at an inflection point in the history of OBC. Do you guys realize that? We are living right now in a divide between where we were and where we're going and what God wants us to be. And sometimes what happens when you get to a place like that is you kind of let off the gas, right? And you start to coast a little bit. And I'm here to tell you, this is not the time for OBC. This is not the time to coast. This is the time for us to put the pedal down and to recognize that God has got incredible things that He wants us to do for Him in the future. And I really believe that adding this position and this person is going to be a big part of that. It's going to be challenging. I'm telling you right now, Micah is going to be a challenge to us as a church, and I cannot wait for that. I love to be challenged in the way that we will in the coming years. And so what we're going to do this morning is just give you a little bit of an opportunity to meet Micah, to get to know a little bit about his background and his family and his experience, and for you to hear about his vision for what missions ministry at Oakdale could look like in the future. And so we're going to spend the rest of our morning hearing from Micah. Before we do that, before I bring him up here before you, I want to take a couple of minutes and do two things. First, I want to talk about missions efforts at OBC and why we think a dedicated staff member can help us in that area. Missions has always been a priority for OBC, and specifically for me since I first became pastor. I've been on 5 different mission trips or mission experiences over the past 20 years, and they have been some of the most important spiritual experiences of my life. In fact, probably most of you wouldn't know this, but it was on a mission trip in Mexico in 2005 that I felt God finally gave me permission to accept the position of lead pastor here at OBC. We were in Chickasha and very happy in our church there and had been offered this position, and we're struggling to figure out what do we do. And on that mission trip, that's where God really spoke to my heart and said, I want you to go and to do this. Now, I can't really speak to the church's mission experiences prior to me coming in 2005, but since 2005, we have offered and supported the following opportunities. I'm going to put them up here behind me. We did a 1-week trip to Matamoros, Mexico. It's called the Big Feed. It was incredible in 2005. We did a 1-week exploratory trip to Estapa, Mexico. We did an exploratory trip to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, with several of us from the church. We did a 1-week medical mission trip to Nicaragua several years ago with a couple of our doctors. We did a 1-week youth ministry trip to Denver, Colorado, a 1-week youth ministry trip to Salt Lake City, Utah last year, and then a 1-week youth ministry trip to Belize, City, Belize this past summer. We created the Experiencing Missions team and the Experiencing Missions part of our budget to provide opportunities and resources for hands-on missions involvement by members of OBC. And then we have had the privilege of supporting more than 30 short-term trips for high school, mostly high school and college students over all of these years. Now, each one of those opportunities were important. But here's the deal. Over the years, we've never found what we felt was the right long-term fit where we could invest relationally with missionaries on the ground in areas of need. We believe that OBC has a lot to offer from a missions perspective, both in people and in resources. And we sort of started and stopped and started several times over the years. We just never really hit our stride. And so we feel like this is an untapped area of potential for us. And what we've learned about OBC is that sometimes we need dedicated staff to help give us vision and clarity and direction when it comes to accomplishing specific ministries. There's no better example of that than our senior adult minister, and really our senior adult ministry, which is the new ministry is officially 1 year old this month. And it's been great. It's been incredible. And here's what I would point out to you. If you're sitting here this morning or last week when I started talking about this, and the thought hit your mind, well, why do we need a staff member to lead missions efforts? Understand that some of our senior adults were probably thinking the same thing a year ago. Why do we need a staff member to help? We're already doing senior adult ministry. And I feel pretty confident in saying that bringing Chris on as our senior adult pastor was one of the best decisions we've made over the years. He's done a great job. And that ministry has just grown and grown. It's been beautiful to watch. So we've identified a need, we've developed a plan to begin meeting that need, and now we have who we believe to be the right person in Micah to help us carry out that plan. I would also mention that you're going to find the job description for this new position inside your bulletin. There's also a resume for Micah there. And while I don't want you to get distracted by it, see, you're all looking at it now. I don't want you to be distracted by that, but please, after the service today, take a look at that and become familiar with that. I think there's some helpful information. Now, that's the first part. Here's the second. I want to walk you through the process we've been through over the past 5 months. And for you to understand how many people have been involved in this process. And here's why we're going to do that. Because sometimes when we bring a new staff member before you for a vote, I think it can feel like, well, I'm just now hearing about this. I have no idea who this person is. How in the world am I supposed to vote that I believe Micah Compton is the right person for this job when I don't even know Micah Compton? I don't even know who he is. And I totally get that. But what I want you to understand is on December 3rd, so not this morning, not next Sunday, but in a couple of weeks, on December 3rd, listen to me, you're really not going to be voting that you believe Micah Compton is the right person for the job. What you're going to be asked to vote is that you have confidence in the discernment of the people who have participated in this process over the past 5 months. And that even though you'll only have spent minutes getting to know Micah, others like myself and Executive Pastor Paul Kirsch and our staff and our personnel committee and others have spent hours and hours and hours cumulatively working with Micah to get to this point where he now stands before you and you get the chance to know him and to meet him. It's also really helpful that Micah has been serving as a youth ministry intern under Marwin since June, and he's been to Falls Creek with us and has worked directly with all of our youth ministry workers and some of our parents. Micah has helped start a brand new English as second language class for Spanish-speaking people in our community, and that's given him the opportunity to work closely with some of our other church members as well. And Micah has been filling in as a drummer and working with our worship team from time to time. And so there are a lot of different people who you do know and that you do trust who've helped us all get to this point this morning. So let's take a look at how that process has gone. Real quickly, I just want to work through this timeline. In May of 2023, Micah graduated from OBU and with the expectation of eventually becoming a missionary. I can tell you that becoming a missionary is a little bit like becoming a lead pastor. After you finish your education, there's still some life and experience requirements that you kind of have to gain before you're ready to go and to do that. In June of 2023, Micah interviews and is hired to serve for the summer as an OBC youth ministry intern. This is where I first got to know Micah. We went to Falls Creek together, spent that week together. I was immediately very impressed with both his maturity and his desire to serve and to learn. I really liked what I saw in Micah. And Micah would continue to serve in the youth ministry throughout the summer, assisting Marwin. In July of this summer, Micah met for the first time with myself and with Paul Kirsch and shared a presentation with us for a mission strategy for OBC. And at that meeting, he shared sort of an expanded version of what you're going to hear from him today. He wasn't looking for a job. He was just so passionate about missions ministry, and I think passionate about OBC as well, that he wanted to share his vision for the church based on his experience in missions, his education at OBU, and I think some of what he learned from the missions pastor in his home church, Emmanuel Baptist Church in Shawnee. And I can tell you again that Paul and I immediately saw that there was an opportunity during this meeting to potentially utilize a resource that God was placing right in front of our faces. Listen, you don't want to miss those opportunities. Do you guys understand that? They don't come that often, and you have to take advantage of them when they're there. And so we began to pray about the possibility of seeking to create this missions pastor staff position, much as we had done last year with our senior adult pastor, like we've talked about. In August, Micah took a position with the Oklahoma Baptist Homes for Children, and also at that time let me know that he intended to make OBC his home church, and he was wanting to look for opportunities to serve and to grow here. He helped us establish this English as second language class and began teaching it twice a week. I'm so excited about that, and we see that need and how that can meet needs in our community. And then Micah continued to work and serve in our youth ministry as well. In September, a couple of months ago, Paul and myself began informal discussions with select church leaders and staff about the possibility of creating this new position with Micah as a candidate to fill that role. Micah met with myself and Paul for his first really formal interview to discuss the prospect of working through all of this together. And then eventually I met with the personnel committee, the experiencing missions team, and the deacons in different ways to share our intent to pursue this new position, which would be funded through the reallocation of cooperative program contributions. Now let me pause right there for just a second. Let me explain something that I think is important for us to know. As a refresher, OBC has traditionally set aside 13% of its total budget to go to the cooperative program of the Southern Baptist Convention, which funds local, state, national, and global missions. And as you may or may not be aware, some things have been changing over the past couple of years in terms of the direction of the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention, and the way that they use funds to support the different ministries. And I believe that it is appropriate for us to reallocate approximately about 3% of those funds to efforts that we can actually have our hands on and have control of and know exactly where they're going and what they are accomplishing. And so the recommendation on December the 3rd will be to fund this new position, this new missions pastor position, as well as some additional missions resources through that reallocation. And although that's not a standard approach for a Baptist church, I can tell you I've had plenty of positive feedback from everybody I've talked to about it over these past few months. In October, Micah met with Paul and I, as well as Dan Wilgus, who is the head of the personnel committee, Steve Boone, head of experiencing missions team. We had a second formal interview. In November, Micah meets with the experiencing missions team, the OBC personnel committee, and a representative from the finance committee, that's Kathy Cullen, for a third formal interview. And you'll see a list here. We'll just show you a list of everybody who is serving on those committees at this time. And when that was done, after 4.5 months, the Personnel Committee voted unanimously to recommend to OBC the creation of a new missions pastor position and for Micah Compton to fill that position. And that brings us to last week when I introduced Micah to the church and shared that we were going to spend some time getting to know him a little better this morning. So, a long process. Do you guys see that? A prayerful process and a process that involved lots and lots of leaders at OBC. What do you say we hear from Micah Compton this morning? Won't you welcome him as Micah comes? We're going to kind of reset the stage here just a little bit. All right, Micah, how are you feeling this morning?
Feeling good. Gotta get my stuff.
Are you nervous at all?
I don't usually get nervous.
Okay. All right. He's a confident young man. That's good. We like that. I shared some questions that I wanted to ask him and gave him a chance to sort of organize his thoughts and be prepared for how he wanted to respond to them. So I'm just going to work through some different questions that he's already prepared for. I may pepper in some things that he's not prepared for as well. But why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your family background, where you grew up. Tell us about your family.
Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty large family. My parents had 8 kids, and so 7 of us, or 7 siblings, and we were all homeschooled all the way through college, and so we were a pretty tight group, and now have 2 brothers that are both in the military. They're both married and with kids, and then I've got one sister here, Lindsay. She's got her family running around here, and then I've got a sister serving as a missionary in Europe, and then, yeah, that's awesome. And then one brother who's here, he's engaged. That's his fiance right there. And then he's getting his plumbing license as we speak, and then a sister at OBU, and then one at home. So
when the Comptons are here, our attendance increases by like 13% every Sunday. So we love it when the Comptons show up on a Sunday morning. Yeah.
So it's a fun group, and we actually just got back together for the first time in like 4 years, all of us, and so it's fun when we all get together. But I grew up in Norman, so Boomer Sooner, and then moved to Shawnee when I was about 10. And my dad took a job at OBU, so spent a lot of time at church and at OBU where he worked, and that was kind of my social outing.
This is where I got to know Otis, Micah's dad, and got to know him well over 6 years at OBU. Jamie got to know Otis as well, and so we've known this family. We've been connected to this family for a long time. Yeah,
so that was kind of how I grew up. I love to hunt and to fish and play volleyball and all sorts of things. My dad was kind of a traveling pastor. He would do interims a lot, so me and my brother would go with him to different churches around the state and fish and all that.
Micah is a very, very serious and competitive volleyball player. I can tell you do not want to get in his way when he's on the volleyball court. Tell us a little bit about your church background, your spiritual background.
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in church, went to all the children's ministry things, and won my RA race car, if you guys remember, whenever that was the thing. Yes. Won my race in that. So was involved in a lot of things, played drums in the worship band throughout the youth group, and when I got older. And I always said when I was younger that I wanted to be a missionary, that I wanted to tell people about Jesus. And I didn't really understand what that meant. But for as long as I can remember, I would tell my parents that I wanted to move to New York and be a taxi driver. And then when people got in my car, they would be forced to listen to me. And so I could tell them about Jesus.
Only a future missionary would come up with that scheme.
I think it's a great plan still. I think it's a great plan. But by the time I turned about 7, I was able to understand enough and went to a Christmas play that my grandpa's church was doing, and saw the story of Jesus laid out. And that's whenever I started to allow Christ to change me and to come into my life and kind of be the Lord over my life and direct me. And then when I was about 14, I felt a call from the Lord to do something on the mission field. And so from there, I asked him to use me in the difficult places in the world. I wanted to go where the gospel had not reached, and there was still a need for it. So, and then, like I said, I was heavily involved in church, in my church back in Shawnee, Emmanuel. Taught Sunday school after I graduated high school, and played the drums and volunteered for their various ministries and outreaches that they had. I never really thought that I would work at a church, but here I am. God brought me to Oakdale after I graduated OBU, like you said, and to help Marlon with the youth ministry, and that's kind of where this whole process got started. But by the end of the summer, I didn't want to leave, and made this my church home. So
I know you've talked a lot about your church in Shawnee. It's a great church, and I know that it's had a big impact on your spiritual growth and your development. Talk a little bit about your experience at Oakdale over these past 5 months. I'm always kind of interested to hear about your interaction with our people and our ministries and our church.
Yeah, so came in right after I graduated and started working with Marwin. My first week here actually was Falls Creek, full week, and so really got to know the youth ministry and some of the volunteers that help in that. And I saw a church in that week and throughout the rest of the summer, I just saw a church that really cared for its members and loved this community well, and was proactive in building up each other in love. And so what I look for in a church, and I've never, up until I graduated, I never really had to choose where I go to church. So for the first time, I was kind of deciding where God was leading me as far as church goes. And what I looked for is a church that there is service and ministry happening Monday through Saturday. And I love preaching and I love worship, but I really want to see what the church body is doing outside of a Sunday morning. And I saw that taking action after Sunday morning was a really important part of Oakdale. And so I made some really awesome relationships in my time here. And Shirley McBee, is she in here? There she is. Shirley, sweet Shirley, she allowed me to move into her guest room for the end of my internship, and it was a fun little roommate situation that we had going. But
we should have done a reality TV series.
It would have been fun.
She's never offered me to stay in her guest bedroom ever.
No, she's so sweet to open her home up to me and allow this college graduate to come stay with her. But yeah, so that super sweet relationship with the McBees, and then got to know a lot of the youth parents here, and just saw that the parents here really care about how their children are being built up spiritually and what they're being taught. And then obviously came in already with family here, but then Jamie and her family, we've known them for years and years, and so just kind of felt home already, but then felt, even with the people I met when I came here, it felt like I'd been here for years. The way that you and the members and the congregation just loved me and encouraged me, and got to serve alongside them and everything. And then really one of my favorite parts about the Oakdale community is the staff. And Marlon allowed me to join the staff in different meetings and outings and things, and so got to see how tight-knit the staff here at Oakdale is, and how the relationships that they have are just super positive and encouraging. And the best thing is that I haven't seen a single staff conflict that isn't handled well and with love, and no one gets blood on their shirt or anything. Like, it's just a really nice, I mean, Marwin has probably tried a couple times, but
you probably just jinxed us, but
yeah,
that's fine.
See.
We'll work through it.
We'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, so even as an intern, wasn't even a member here yet until the end of the summer. I just felt loved and treated like I was one of their own. So,
and I think that's pretty important. I wanted Micah to take the time to talk about that, because we don't get that opportunity when we're hiring staff members to get to know them for months and months and months, and to build 5 months worth of relationships. So that is kind of a little bit of a unique thing. Now, here is something that I want to ask, and I want Micah to have plenty of time to talk about vision for ministry, but I do think this is an important component. Micah is 22 years old. Is that correct? Just graduated from college. And I mentioned last week, when you look up here and I introduce him to you, Micah doesn't feel young. I promise you. He feels like, he's a grown man. But when some of us look at him, the first thing that we may see, maybe for some people, the only thing that we may see is a young guy. And you may wonder, how could he possibly have what it takes to be able to be a staff member and to lead a ministry and to take care of all the different things that come with that. But Micah is uniquely experienced. He's uniquely educated, and he kind of has a unique spirit about him, I think, a teachable spirit, something that's really important to me. And we feel like he is qualified to be able to do this. So I want you to tell us a little bit about your education and your ministry experience, your ministry background.
Yeah, so like I said, from that time when I felt the Lord was kind of calling me to the mission field, I had some opportunities beforehand. We got to go to Serbia and Slovenia when I was about 14 and teach American football camps in Europe, which was a cool deal. But through many opportunities in high school and through college, I got to go overseas in a lot of different ways. Like I said, I think that taxi driver deal is a great plan, but God has allowed me many opportunities from that. And so a few short-term trips with my dad and with my brother through OBU, and then a couple trips with an organization that we're involved in reaching souls. And then at OBU, got to lead some trips and lead some of the mission teams that they have there. So taught football camps or coached football camps in Europe, and through that did these small group Bible studies with the different groups there, and then got to trek to unreached villages in the Himalayas. Got to work alongside local pastors and missionaries, teaching them and helping them through strategies of evangelism and doctrine and different things, and then to go out and use that to reach entire cities with the gospel. It's really awesome. So coming out of high school, I was certain that I wanted to do something in the mission field, and so I went to OBU and joined their Global Marketplace program, which is it's a degree that focuses on serving in the hardest places in the world, the unreached places where they don't really want missionaries or Christians, and doing that by using a practical skill that meets the needs of the people, and then using that skill to meet the spiritual need. And so my emphasis in that was TESOL, which means teaching English as a second language. And so I'm getting to use that here with the ESL class, and hopefully we'll get to use that overseas to meet a need. And so with that degree, I got to go for a semester overseas and live in Southeast Asia, teaching English and sharing the gospel in one of the hardest to reach places.
You have been a lot of places.
I have been a lot of places.
The Himalayas, is that in Texas?
Right.
I mean,
right. Little Himalayas, probably.
That's pretty amazing, some of the different experiences that you have had. So now you come from that educational background, you come from an unusual experience on the field and missions in different places, and now you come to Oakdale, and you begin to develop a vision for what missions ministry might look like at Oakdale. So now take us through that. Walk through what that looks like in your mind as you look forward for Oakdale Baptist Church.
Yeah, so I kind of had this idea, this vision about a missions ministry at Oakdale from this summer. I was working with Marwin and realized that youth group goes on a mission trip every year, and they've gone to, like you said, Utah and Belize that summer, and thought, well, what other mission trips does Oakdale have? So I went on their website, and if you look on ministries at Oakdale's website and go down to missions, there's a page that says missions. And so looked on what they have there, and if you pull up the slide, this is the statement that they had on there. At Oakdale Baptist Church, we desire the members of our community to engage in God's mission where he or she lives, plays, and works. Additionally, we see short-term mission trips as essential to the spread of the gospel, the life of the local church, and the discipleship of the missionary. We want our members to experience short-term trips for sharing Jesus, considering committing to long-term missions and establishing a local vision for global missions. And so from that statement that's on Oakdale's website, I saw two things immediately. One is that there is a lingering heart for short-term mission trips at Oakdale, and that two, there really aren't any consistent ones in the church. And so that week I had been praying for God to show me where and how I could be most useful for his kingdom. That's a prayer I pray often at every new season in my life. And if you know me, or get to know me, you know that I care deeply for unengaged and unreached people groups all around the world. And so I know God has called me to be an instrument in reaching those people. So I sought the Lord in this and had this vision that I brought to Paul and Justin of a missions ministry. And so with that vision, it kind of splits up into three parts. And the first one is the local. That is finding the lost in our community, meeting their physical needs in order to share the solution to their spiritual need. And we'll talk more about what that looks like and the kind of different things that can go on in that realm. And then the second was the domestic, and that's kind of in our country, looking at the lost in our country and finding the people that need Christ the most, or finding the international community that still hasn't heard. You don't have to go far to find people that still haven't heard. There are people coming from all over the world right here to OKC. We do have an Afghan ministry where we minister to one family here in Oklahoma City. They're coming here, and so we have the opportunity to bring the gospel to them in a way that they've never heard before. And so that's a really important aspect of missions. And then the third is the global, going to those places and to those people where the gospel has not yet reached and the local church is not able to do it on their own. And so finding those partnerships where we can be useful in building the kingdom and expanding the gospel message out into the world. So all three of these come from a biblical understanding of that movement of the gospel, the Great Commission. In Acts 1:8, Jesus says, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in Judea and in Samaria and then to the ends of the earth." Jesus called his disciples to be reaching their own people in Jerusalem, and then to go out into the land in Judea and Samaria, and then to take it where it still needs to go, to the ends of the earth, where the gospel is still unheard of. And that's what they did. But it's not over. The task is not over. There are still places where the gospel is unheard of, and that there's still work to be done. So all three of these are strong and an essential need in the strength of the local church. I saw that there was a lot of outreach done locally with Oakdale, which I love. We work with BRT, the Boys Ranch, in providing meals for them and volunteering for different opportunities there. Crocho Schools, where we do a lot of different things, and Rocket Pantry here at the church, and a lot of different ministries that Oakdale has been filling the role of that for a long time. Something I learned while seeking advice and guidance on this vision to bring to Paul and Justin was that there's a stark difference between an outreach and a mission. So if you look here, that an outreach service identifies the needs of the community and works to fill those needs in the best way possible. It focuses on vulnerable, at-risk people and shows love and generosity through serving and giving. A very important part of the church to be able to serve its community. But a mission is a strategic effort to reach a certain community or people with the gospel, and it meets material needs in order to meet the spiritual need. So the difference between an outreach and a mission is the gospel. If something does not have the goal of giving the good news, then it's missing the mission. It's not a mission. God has called us to do both, I would say. He's called us to do both outreach and mission. And James 1, it says, true religion is caring for orphans and widows in their time of need. And that's outreach. We're caring for our community. But he has also called us to preach. And in Romans 10, it says, how then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring the good news. So outreach is important, like I said, but we will continue to do so. And some of the ministries that Oakdale does has that goal of mission, but without verbally preaching the gospel, without bringing the gospel to them, we're missing the mission of the church. Yeah. It's not enough to just hope that, by serving them, they'll get connected with our church and they'll come. That works sometimes, but what really needs to happen is we bring the gospel to them. They accept it, they hear it, and they come to church to grow in it. So what I told Justin and Paul in that first meeting was a vision of Oakdale joining God and engaging a diverse and broken world with the resources it has in order to make Christ's name known to the vulnerable and the needy. So I know Oakdale has a communal heart for the nations and for the lost, and I believe that we can provide more than a financial gift to just one member every now and then that's going on a short term. If our willingness is to God, if we say yes to God, then he is able to place us and use us where we can most be useful for the kingdom in ways that we can't imagine. I see sending medical teams to places that are stricken with poverty and war, providing trauma care for refugees escaping their hostile environment, and caring for orphans and widows in cultures where they are normally seen as outcasts, and all the while doing all of that while sharing the good news of Jesus with every person that we serve. So this is a lot to learn and grow in on my part, to kind of help lead this, but it's also, I think there's a lot that we can learn as a church and grow in regards to evangelism and effective evangelism.
And I want to stop and say that, part of this job is going to be you learning and growing, and it's going to be part of you helping us to learn and to grow. And so it's not a one-way street here, it's a two-way street. We're going to learn and grow from one another.
So, I think there are some things that we can implement now in order to get going and to kind of create this culture of evangelism. And one of those is having trainings and discipleship in the work of evangelism. For there to be that culture of sharing the gospel, we have to train up our members in strategies and practices that will equip them to bring the gospel everywhere they go, to where they work and where they play. And I think discipleship is a very important part of that process. It's not really enough to just teach evangelism, but to bring someone alongside you. If you're more effective and more skilled in reaching people with the gospel and sharing your faith, then bring someone alongside you to show them how you do it and to model it for them, and then to assist them in their effort, and then to show them where you can help them along, and then eventually to send them out to do the same thing.
So I would ask you as church members, as participants at OBC, would you be willing to participate in training where you can learn how to share Christ, how to share the gospel? Would you be willing to learn how to be discipled in this area and to disciple others in this same thing? And you may think, well, gosh, I could never, but that's the deal. Everyone starts off thinking that. But through training, through discipleship, we can overcome that. And we can accomplish things that otherwise we wouldn't be able to accomplish. So training and discipleship is one.
And then the second one would be having regularly scheduled evangelism events, and a time where our community as a whole, our community group, comes together and they go out into our city and in the surrounding areas for the purpose of sharing the gospel. Or you go to a park or something and you say, we're going to share the gospel with 20 people, and you do that. And then you go the next week and you say, we're going to share the gospel with 40 people. And you start to get this practice, but it doesn't just help you get practice in sharing it, but it creates a fellowship around the gospel, around evangelism. and gives people confidence. And one of the most daunting tasks, I'd say, in Christianity that people say is, I have a fear of sharing my own faith.
Of course.
And so doing it with the rest of your community kind of gives you that confidence to go out.
So then I would ask you guys, would you be willing, if you'd been trained and discipled and equipped to be able to do this, would you be excited about participating in evangelism events like what Micah is describing, where we go out and reach people and share the gospel with people? And it's challenging, but think about how exciting it would be to see people actually come to Christ. You have a part to play in that. You just have to be willing to do it.
So with those two things, I would say we'd be set up well to create kind of partnerships with missionaries and ministries overseas. We have done some trips in the past, like Justin said, and it's just that nothing is really stuck with our church as something that we can take part as our own ministry. So we need to be looking for those God-ordained relationships with the ministry that we can really take part in and adopt as part of our own. So we don't have to force a relationship. We don't want to go to a place and continue to serve in a place where we're not really needed, or we just think it's a good ministry, but it's not a good fit for our church. We need to find those places that God has ordained for Oakdale to fill that need and to serve in. And so those are the places and the ministries that we will do trips with, that we will go overseas. And what I really hope with this ministry is that each community group will kind of adopt its own trip, and that it'll be able to commit to praying and to serving on that trip, where it's the same consistent people going each year or each trip that we have. The reason for that is because I hear so many times where people will see us come to a place, and they'll say, "Oh, you're the same group that came a year ago?"
Sure.
And it really speaks to them to know that those same people are coming over and over again, and that we really do care for that community overseas. And so having a community group adopt a trip is kind of a way to create a consistent group that invests and prays over the people that we're ministering to.
So if we do this, we hire you, we create this position and start this ministry, can we expect to see a mission trip opportunity this next year, 2024?
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm praying for. So I'm already kind of working on where that will be, and praying about what first kind of initial thing that we can do as a church. So I want to open up a couple opportunities by the summer for our church to take a part in. And this isn't to say that the youth group can only go on their trip. I still want it to be open to all members that are willing and able to do the training and the effort to go overseas and to share the gospel.
Without committing to it, throw out some examples of some places we might go this summer.
Yeah, so one of the places that has been on my heart lately is Morocco, or North Africa. We'll talk about security language when it goes into that. But you're working with an unreached people group there, and to evangelize to them and to be able to share the gospel in a place where it still is unheard. And then another one is working with an organization that's here in the city and sending some of our really talented, gifted members to teach pastors and to teach missionaries things of doctrine, things of apologetics, and areas in that sense, and then to be able to use that to reach the city that they're in. And we're unsure of where that will be, but that is an opportunity that is opening up more and more.
Okay. So you guys, can you guys envision over these next few months, going through the summer, and we're getting ready to send kids to camp in June, and then we've got Vacation Bible School, and now we've got a trip going to Morocco with 12 church members who are being a part of that, and then in the end of July, we're sending a group to Venezuela to do a pastor school and a missionary training school, and seeing these groups coming back and reporting on all that God has done and what they've experienced and the people who've come to Christ. And can you get a sense of how exciting and how challenging that would be for our church to be a part of that in the days ahead. And here's the thing, some of you are sitting there thinking to yourself, oh, I can't wait. I would love to be a part of that. And others are thinking, oh, I'll never do that. That'll never be me. But here's the deal, it will be. It will be, you just don't know it yet. But 100%, there's going to be an opportunity for you to participate and to be a part of this. And we participate in these trips in different ways. It's not just going to Morocco. It's praying, it's supporting financially, it's preparing things that go in advance. There are all kinds of opportunities to be able to participate in these ministries. All right, so here's the deal. There's never enough time. No matter how much time we set aside, there's just never enough. And I would love to sit here and visit with Micah and have him share more and more and more. We've given you kind of a thumbnail, and inside your bulletin, again, you see a resume that gives you some ideas of experience. You see a job description that gives you an idea of what day to day and week to week and throughout the year might look like for Micah. And then in a couple of weeks, we're going to come together at the end of our Christmas concert. We'll have a big fellowship meal, and then we will have our annual budget meeting. And at that meeting, that's where Micah will be presented, and you will be voting on him and on the position and on the funding of it. And I'm going to share this. Micah did not give me permission to share it, but I'm going to share it anyway. That'll establish our relationship early on. I asked him, what are you nervous about? He said, the only thing I'm nervous about is the idea of people voting on me, which, by the way, 98% of you have no idea what that feels like, to have your church voting on you. It's a strange feeling, and I want you to keep that in mind on that Sunday when you think, I think I'll just vote no for this guy, and just see how that goes. It'll be a really good day. It'll be an exciting day, and it'll be a day where I think we will all experience a sense of God really wants to accomplish something at Oakdale Baptist Church. I can't wait to be a part of it. Here's how we're going to conclude today. We are already a couple of minutes past, and so I'm going to ask the praise team to come on up. We're not going to sing through our last song, but I'm going to have you guys come up and kind of go ahead and lead it. I'm going to ask that we end this way. I'm going to have Micah and I step down to the front, and I'm going to invite some different groups of people to come down and to pray over Micah. We're just going to take a couple of minutes. It will extend our service for just a minute. But I think that it's worth it. I think it's important. I'm going to invite our deacons to come forward. I'm going to invite anybody that serves on our personnel committee to come forward. I'm going to ask anybody who serves on our missions, experiencing missions team to come forward. And then I'm just going to open it up to anybody else who would like to come and just, put your hand on Micah or put your hand on the person who's got their hand on Micah. And we're just going to just take a moment and let people voice prayers for him. And then when I feel like that time is done, I'm going to ask Steve Boone, who again is a deacon, the head of our experiencing missions team, if he will close us out in prayer. And as we're doing this, we'll pray out loud, but as we do this, we'll have you guys stand, we'll have Jamie lead, and I just want to encourage you, I don't want you to sing. I want you to pray. I want you to pray for Micah. I want you to pray for our church. I want you to pray for direction. I want you to pray for unity, all the things that we pray for when we're trying to make decisions that we know will impact us in the future. And so I'm asking you to spend 2 or 3 minutes, whatever your relationship to our church is, and just offer up a prayer that we would be submitted and obedient to Christ. Amen? All right, let's come right now. Let's stand. Micah and I will come down to the front. These groups I've invited, you guys come. Really, anybody's invited to join us.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning's service. We thank you for Justin and the staff and all the church members that have been invested into this process to this point. We thank you, God, for all the efforts that's been put forth on Micah's behalf and by himself. But God, we don't have to look very far to see that it's more than that. Your hands are all over it. You're guiding, your wishes, your plan is stamped. So God, help us just to follow that. help us to seek you, seek your will, and then go through with it. Something like this seems way too big for us, way too big for our church. But God, it's not too big for you. So help us to stay focused, tuned into you, and obedient as we go through this process. It's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.